Hi, my name is Luke Hankins. I would like to thank Rebecca Aronson for inviting me to participate in the Bad Mouth reading series. I'm honored to be here reading from my new poetry collection, my second collection, Radiant Obstacles. And it was just released on the 1st of this month, August. So I hope you will check it out if anything you hear from this reading intrigues you. A little bit about myself. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, where I've lived for a long time. I am a writer and translator and editor. I founded the nonprofit literary press Orison Books, which I also hope you'll take a look at. That's Orison, ORISON Books. You can find us online and on social media. Well, I'm going to read a number of poems from Radiant Obstacles. I've done a few online readings recently, so I decided to choose a number of poems that I haven't read yet from the book, in addition to a couple that I have. But I wanted to add some variety and choose some poems that maybe didn't at first leap out to me as the most likely poems to read for a reading, but oftentimes those poems end up being more interesting to an audience than the poems that first occur to the writer as the ones best suited to be read out loud. So I'm going to give this a shot. So I'd like to start by reading the epigraph to the book, which is from the French mystic philosopher Simone Weil, who wrote that the world is the closed door. It is a barrier, and at the same time, it is the way through. Simone Weil. And I'll also read the very first poem in the collection, a short prose poem called A Voice Out of the Ruins. Nostalgia for a place I've never been. Remembered intimacy with a person I've never known. A voice out of the ruins of Eden, calling me back not into Eden, but into what is possible there, where Eden once stood, in the ruins. There are a number of poems that take on theological and philosophical questions, some of the big questions. I've always sort of been obsessed and intrigued by those. And there are also a number of poems that deal with the natural world and the individual's experience of, sort of direct visceral experience of the natural world as a way of impinging on those bigger philosophical and theological questions. And so some of the next several poems that I read are in that vein. This one is called Tree Rings. Tree Rings. Here is a history that does not concern you, a making apart, without the imposition of form, a shapely, patient expansion, except not patient because it is mindless. But you cannot help regarding the sawn trunk allegorically, devoted becoming, then the desolate crash through other limbs. Do we not also expand ourselves, and thus can speak of the slow sorrow of the trees, even though we know they are not sad, not slow, except in our perceiving? It is enough to perceive a thing for it to bear the force of truth. So, the hillside stands of trees driving minutely upward through mindless centuries. Their jagged symmetries unerringly perpetuate, and the soft new leaves, the supple branches giving way to the wind, seem just like us, though they are not. Next poem is about a creature that is something, has sort of become something of a cliche in recent and contemporary poetry, but this is a poem that I hope addresses and incorporates that creature and its life in a fresh way. At least I hope. The creature is a cicada. And cicadas are really fascinating in terms of their biology and their life cycle. They're apparently, I'm no biologist, but I have, or at one time I read a bit about the life cycles of cicadas, and apparently there are different sort of subspecies or families, I'm not sure the exact technical term, of cicadas that have different breeding life cycles. And I believe the one with the longest life cycle, reproductive cycle, is called brudex, which is what biologists call that group of cicadas. And they spend 17 years underground as nymphs before they come up into the form that we probably recognize, and make their chirring noises up in the trees and shed their exoskeletons and fly off and have a brief, quite a brief lifespan above ground before they reproduce and the nymphs go back into the ground. So brudex spends 17 years in the ground, and this is a short poem, much shorter than my introduction, about brudex, and it is set here in Asheville, North Carolina, and in the year 2008, which was I don't know if it's called a hatching year for brudex. And suddenly this spring the whirring of a vast machinery in the trees, an unseen ubiquity of sound that indicates aliens to children and the mad. But the truth is, risen from the ground after 17 years as nymphs, these are the opposite of aliens, come out of the earth itself to whir among the boughs, to mate and let their offspring fall into familiar soil. Another short poem that ends one section of the book, called In the Woods. I feel so far from the meaning of the earth. It is silent. It lives, but does not speak. I will not say that it should speak, only that I want it to. And no matter how I chide myself, I wait, listening. This poem is called Wake, and it has an epigraph of its own from Sir James Jeans, who wrote, "The universe begins to look more like a great thought than a great machine." Wake. Then, dear Lord, what so troubles your dreams? Continents rise magnificently from the sea and grow green, seethe with plants and animals. But Lord, they age and decay, disembowel or swallow whole to digest slowly, or plant their eggs in one another's flesh in this dream from which I pray you'll wake. My childhood friend was born with holes in his heart and died at 30, afraid, trembling, Lord. Are you trembling in your sleep? Wake. I stood by his open grave, prettified with astroturf. 70 people died at a funeral in Mozambique yesterday by drinking beer contaminated with crocodile poison. And crocodiles are poisoned because they were born with teeth and hungry and strong. A man crying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe," provokes not the slightest adjustment of the policeman's grip, and he drowns in broad air. Why these tortured thoughts? Because we are so in need of comforting, I long to comfort you. Wake into a better state of mind, into whatever light warms the world in which you sleep. Do not let your heart be troubled, and cease to trouble ours. Wake, undream us. That poem broaches more into the theological, addressed to God, or a theoretical God as it is. This next poem continues the thread of theological inquiry via the experience of the physical world, and it is called Equal and Opposite. Looking at the sky, the word sky comes to mind. The word has a referent, the sky itself, but the sky itself has no referent. To live in language is to anticipate metaphor. But in this moment, I sense the void upon which all these years I have built my house of words. Only come with me to the precipice where I peer in terror, I pray, grasping at words that offer no resistance, like feathers snatched from the air, like ropes not tied to anything. I plunge through the world that is no language, praying in my language to the absent referent, the force equal and opposite to the void, the grip that can, I pray, suspend my fall, so that I might hang in what the sky means. A lot of my poems come out of my experience of being raised in a very conservative, even I would call it fundamentalist, religious Christian environment, and later evolving away from it in what for me was a quite a traumatic process, actually. And this is a poem that addresses that history a little more explicitly than many of my others, though not all. It's called Crucifix. Christ hangs from his wrists, arms fully extended and useless, his full weight sagging on the nails. Imagine the gravity of that pendant on your neck, the moment when God can no longer pull himself up for a breath, when the fluid filling his pericardium and pleura at last smothers him. But I wear no necklace anymore. Of all things I've lost, along with my faith, I'll miss most the ability to pity God. The last poem from Radiant Obstacles that I'll read is called Spring Prayer. And then I'm going to read one final poem, a newer poem that's not in the book. So this is Spring Prayer. Allow me to accept this April afternoon's sunlight warm on my arm, that simple delight for what it is, pleasure without price. Let me release my grip on guilt for just this little while. I would not dim this bright touch by hiding in the shade of my heart. Let spring arrive here too. May I forget to not bloom and forgive my constant requests for forgiveness, even now, tainting this warm moment. So those are some poems from Radiant Obstacles, and I'm going to end with one short poem that is a newer poem. It is for my father, and it recently appeared in an Echo Theo review, which is a great, very interesting publication that I hope you will check out, Echo Theo review. And the poem is called Hum. Though we were poor at touch as a family, my father would blow on my face to cool me in the heat of Louisiana summers, upstairs in church where he ran the soundboard. It was the sweetest shock, as if the Holy Ghost had swept straight through me, leaving my spine full of static. His breath hums in me still. Thank you so much, and thank you again, Rebecca, for having me on the Bad Mouth reading lineup, and I wish you all a wonderful day and night. Thanks so much.